A cream-colored envelope arrived without fanfare. There was no extravagant packaging, no dramatic announcement, no flashing cameras waiting outside a hotel. Just a discreet seal, an embossed logo, and a name recognized instantly by anyone who has ever followed the world of fashion. Vogue. Inside was an invitation. And printed on that invitation was a name that would connect two worlds that rarely overlap in quite this way: professional tennis and high fashion. Alex Eala. At just 21 years old, the young Filipina had already become one of the most recognizable rising figures in tennis. She had traveled from the courts of the Philippines to some of the biggest stages in the sport, carrying not only a racket and a dream, but an unmistakable sense of where she came from. And now, she was being invited into one of the most exclusive cultural spaces on Earth, the Met Gala. For most people, an invitation to the Met Gala would be a career-defining moment. For Eala, it became something even bigger, because this wasn't simply about a tennis player attending a celebrity event. It was about representation. It was about fashion. It was about Filipino identity. And ultimately, it was about what happens when an athlete becomes too culturally significant to be defined by sport alone. The Met Gala is often described as the biggest night in fashion, but that description doesn't quite capture how exclusive the event really is. There isn't simply a ticket sitting on a website waiting for someone with enough money to buy it. The guest list is carefully curated. Celebrities, musicians, actors, designers, athletes, business leaders, and cultural figures may all be considered, but being famous isn't enough. The invitation itself represents a form of cultural recognition, and that makes Eala's inclusion so fascinating. Her rise had already been impossible to ignore. She had achieved milestones that made Filipino tennis history. She had become a player capable of competing on the biggest stages against some of the most established names in the sport. She had also begun attracting attention far beyond traditional tennis audiences. That distinction matters, because there are thousands of professional athletes in the world. Only a small percentage become recognizable outside their sport, and an even smaller group becomes part of the broader cultural conversation. Eala was beginning to enter that territory. Her tennis career had opened the door. Her personality, heritage, style, and growing global visibility were pushing that door wider. And fashion had noticed. Long before the Met Gala invitation, Eala had already developed a relationship with the fashion world. Her appearances in Vogue Philippines helped establish her not merely as an athlete, but as a Filipino cultural figure. Her fashion collaborations demonstrated another side of her identity. The message was consistent. She wasn't trying to separate her Filipino heritage from her international career. She was taking that heritage with her, everywhere, onto tennis courts, into magazine shoots, across international tournaments, and eventually onto one of the most famous red carpets in the world. That is what made the Met Gala moment so powerful. It wasn't happening in isolation. It was the culmination of a story that had been building for years. A young woman from the Philippines had entered a sport dominated historically by players from Europe, North America, and Australia. She had competed internationally. She had earned attention through her results. And now she was being invited into a room where cultural influence mattered just as much as athletic achievement. But there was one decision that made the entire story even more meaningful. What was Alex Eala going to wear? She could have chosen almost anything. She could have worked with a major European fashion house. She could have selected a famous luxury designer. She could have appeared in a gown designed specifically to fit the expectations of a global red carpet. Instead, she looked closer to home. She turned to her uncle, Filipino designer Alex Eala. And the brief was remarkably simple. Make it Filipino. That decision changed everything. Instead of treating the Met Gala as an opportunity to temporarily adopt another culture's fashion language, Eala wanted her own culture to be the centerpiece. The result was a look built around Filipino tradition but presented through a modern fashion lens. At the heart of the design was piña fabric. Made from pineapple leaf fibers, piña has a long history in Philippine clothing and craftsmanship. It isn't simply a material. It carries heritage. It represents patience, craftsmanship, and generations of Filipino textile tradition. And for Eala, Wearing it at the Met Gala meant bringing that history into one of the world's most photographed fashion environments. The design reportedly came together under extraordinary time pressure. Her uncle and his team had roughly a week to turn the concept into reality. 1 week. That meant every detail had to be considered. The silhouette, the fabric, the construction, the movement, the relationship between traditional Filipino design and contemporary couture. The final look featured a floor-length blush beige chiffon gown. Elegant, soft, minimal, but layered over it was the element that immediately made the outfit unmistakably Filipino, a detachable piña bolero with dramatic butterfly sleeves. The sleeves drew inspiration from the traditional Filipiniana silhouette, and that was important. The designers weren't simply reproducing a historical costume. They were translating it, taking something deeply rooted in Philippine history and giving it a contemporary shape suitable for one of the world's most visible fashion stages. That balance is difficult. Go too far toward tradition, and the result can feel like a costume. Go too far toward modern fashion, and the cultural identity can disappear. The design attempted to live between those two worlds. Traditional at its core, modern in its execution, Filipino in its identity, international in its presentation. And there was another detail that revealed something about Eala herself. The outer piece was detachable. That wasn't just a fashion decision. It reflected her personality. She wanted to be able to remove the top later in the evening if she wanted to dance. It was a small detail, but it said something important. Even on one of the biggest nights of her career, Eala wasn't interested in becoming someone else. She wanted to look elegant. She wanted to honor her culture. But she also wanted to have fun. That combination became part of the charm of the entire moment. Then came the night itself. Manhattan was alive. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was surrounded by cameras, fans, journalists, and photographers. Every arrival became an event. Every outfit became a headline. Every celebrity stepping out of a vehicle was immediately photographed from dozens of angles. And then the car carrying Alex Eala arrived. The door opened. She stepped out. And suddenly, the tennis player became a fashion story. The cameras turned toward her. The attention followed. But what made the moment different was that Eala didn't look overwhelmed. She looked composed, confident, comfortable. The same calmness that had helped her survive pressure on tennis courts was now visible on a completely different stage. She had played in packed stadiums. She had faced elite opponents. She had heard thousands of fans screaming her name. Now she was walking up the famous Met Gala steps. Different environment, same mentality. And as photographs began spreading online, the reaction from the tennis community was immediate. Players who knew Eala as a competitor were suddenly seeing her in a completely different context. Madison Keys reacted enthusiastically. Jessica Pegula praised the look. Other players joined the conversation. Social media filled with comments from fans and fellow athletes. And that reaction mattered, because Eala's Met Gala appearance wasn't happening in a vacuum. She was bringing the tennis world with her. She was showing her fellow players that an athlete could move between worlds without abandoning the identity that made her unique. But the most important reaction may not have come from another player. It came from Eala herself. When she shared photographs from the evening, she explained why she had chosen the look. Her message centered on a simple idea. Wearing Filipiniana made her feel beautiful, and the outfit represented where she came from and what she carried with her when entering rooms like this. That sentiment transformed the entire story, because suddenly, the dress wasn't just a dress. It was a statement. It said that success doesn't require abandoning your origins. It said that you don't have to become less Filipino to become more global. And it said that cultural identity can be an asset rather than an obstacle. That may be the most important part of Eala's rise. She isn't becoming internationally recognized despite being Filipino. Her Filipino identity is becoming part of why people recognize her. That's a profound difference. For decades, athletes from the Philippines have represented the country internationally. But tennis has not historically been one of the sports most associated with Filipino global identity. Basketball, boxing, weightlifting, figure skating. These sports have produced major Filipino and Filipino-American stories. Manny Pacquiao became a global symbol. Hidilyn Diaz created Olympic history. And now Eala is building a different kind of legacy through tennis. Her journey shows how sport can become a bridge between communities. That became particularly visible as her fan base grew internationally. Filipino fans did not simply follow her scores. They followed her journey. They celebrated her victories. They shared photographs. They traveled to tournaments. They watched matches together. And increasingly, they saw Eala as something more than a tennis player. She became representation. A young Filipina succeeding on a global stage. A reminder to Filipino children that the world's biggest sporting stages could belong to them too. That is why the Met Gala mattered. The event wasn't a tennis tournament. There were no rankings, no match points, no trophies. But the cultural stakes were still enormous. For one night, Eala wasn't competing against another athlete. She was participating in a global conversation about fashion, identity, art, and celebrity. And she entered that conversation on her own terms. She didn't need to borrow someone else's identity. She brought the Philippines with her. That is what made the butterfly sleeves so significant. To someone unfamiliar with Filipino fashion, they might simply look dramatic and beautiful. But to Filipinos, they carry another meaning. They connect the modern woman standing on those famous steps with generations of Philippine clothing traditions. The fabric connects the outfit to local craftsmanship. The silhouette connects it to cultural history. And the person wearing it connects that history to the future. That is the real symbolism. Past, present, future, all in one outfit. The story also connects Eala to another tennis legend who understood this intersection between sport and fashion better than almost anyone. Venus Williams. Venus has spent decades proving that tennis players don't have to be defined exclusively by what happens between the lines. She became a fashion figure, a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, a cultural voice. And her involvement with the Met Gala represented exactly the kind of crossover Eala was beginning to experience. For Eala, seeing an athlete like Venus occupying that space was powerful. It demonstrated that the possibilities after athletic success are much larger than simply winning another match. An athlete can influence fashion. An athlete can influence culture. An athlete can become a symbol. And perhaps most importantly, an athlete can open doors for the people who come next. That is the deeper significance of Eala's appearance. She wasn't simply walking into a room. She was helping redefine who belongs in that room. Think about where she started. A young girl developing her game in the Philippines. A country where tennis did not have the same global infrastructure or cultural dominance as some other sports. A player learning to compete internationally. A teenager traveling abroad to pursue her dream. And eventually, a 21-year-old standing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art surrounded by some of the most recognizable people in entertainment and fashion. That journey is almost impossible to summarize in one photograph. But photographs have a strange power. They freeze moments. And that image of Eala in Filipino-inspired fashion can become something bigger than the event itself. Years from now, people may not remember every celebrity who attended. They may not remember every outfit. They may not remember every headline. But they may remember the image of a young Filipina athlete walking up those steps, wearing a modern interpretation of her country's traditional fashion. Because images become symbols. And symbols survive. The Met Gala eventually ends. The red carpet disappears. The cameras move on. The celebrities return home. The flowers are taken down. The museum returns to normal. But cultural moments don't necessarily disappear with the event. Sometimes they become reference points. This could be one of those moments for Filipino tennis. Because representation has a compounding effect. One athlete appears. Young people watch. They become interested. More athletes follow. Sponsors notice. Media coverage expands. Tournament organizers pay attention. And suddenly an individual achievement becomes part of a larger ecosystem.
That is how sports cultures grow.
Not overnight, but through moments that convince people something is possible. Eala's story is especially powerful because she has never seemed interested in hiding the journey that brought her here. She has carried her identity with her. From the tennis court to international media, from sporting arenas to fashion magazines, and finally to the Met Gala. The message is simple. You can go global without losing where you came from. In fact, sometimes the thing that makes you global is precisely the thing that makes you different. That's the lesson sitting underneath the glamour. The Met Gala may be famous for extravagance, celebrity, and couture. But underneath all of that, it is also about storytelling. Clothing tells stories. Designers tell stories. Museums tell stories. And on this night, Eala's clothing told the story of a young Filipino woman carrying her heritage into a room where the entire world was watching. The piña fabric told one part. The butterfly sleeves told another. The modern silhouette added another. And Eala herself completed the story. She was not wearing Filipino fashion because she was expected to. She was wearing it because she wanted to. That distinction matters. It turns heritage from decoration into identity. And perhaps that's why the moment resonated so strongly with Filipino fans. They weren't simply seeing a tennis player wearing a beautiful gown. They were seeing someone from their community standing in a space where they might never have imagined seeing themselves represented. For a country with a huge global diaspora, those images travel quickly. From Manila to Toronto. From New York to Los Angeles. From Filipino communities across North America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. A single photograph can cross oceans in seconds. And suddenly, one athlete becomes a shared source of pride. That is the power of sport when it intersects with culture. And that's why Alex Eala's Met Gala appearance deserves to be remembered as more than a celebrity moment. It was another chapter in a much larger transformation. She entered tennis as a promising young Filipino player. She is increasingly becoming something else. A global athlete, a fashion figure, a cultural representative, and potentially a role model for an entire generation. The most remarkable part is that her story is still being written. At 21, she has years ahead of her. More tournaments, more major stages, more victories, more fashion moments, more opportunities to represent the Philippines. And perhaps one day, another young Filipino athlete will walk into the Met Gala or another global cultural event and not think of it as an impossible dream. They will look at Eala's photographs and think, someone from my country already did it. Someone like me belongs there. That is how legacy begins. Not necessarily with a trophy. Not always with a ranking. Sometimes it begins with an image. A young woman. A famous staircase. Butterfly sleeves catching the light. Piña fabric carrying centuries of history. And a quiet reminder of where she came from. Alex Eala didn't need to shout her identity from the steps. She simply wore it, and the world noticed. That may ultimately be the most powerful statement of all, because the biggest moments aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they arrive quietly, inside a cream-colored envelope, with an embossed logo, and a name, Alex Eala. A tennis player from the Philippines who walked into one of the world's most exclusive rooms carrying something much bigger than herself. She carried home. She carried history. She carried possibility. And for one unforgettable night, she showed the world exactly what happens when an athlete refuses to be defined by only one thing. The match may end. The tournament may finish. The red carpet may disappear. But the image remains. And sometimes, an image can open a door for millions of people who are still waiting for their turn to walk through it.